everyone, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you how to do this woven knit SuperDuo bracelet. It's an idea that someone showed me on Pinterest, and I think it's a really great idea, so I can't take credit for it, but it's just easy herringbone using SuperDuo. So if you know herringbone, you'll pick it up really easily. One thing that you want to make sure is at the start here, we're not going to pull tightly as we get going. For this, you will need 11 O's, you'll need 15 O's, and you'll need some colors of SuperDuos. However many colors you want to use, that's up to you. The project that I'm working on, I'm using Silverline Crystal, Duracoat Galvanized Silver in my 11O, and then I'm using SuperDuo Jade, Jet Picasso, and Opaque Green. Also, you're going to need some glue, some needle and thread. I'm using 0.008 Wildfire beading thread, 12-pound test, and I have a size 10 English beading needle, a pair of scissors, and a burner. And also, in addition to that, you'll need whatever clasp you want to work on. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll show you how to do this herringbone weave that's on the diagonal stitch with the SuperDuos and 11 O's. So the first thing that I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to put on to my thread a stop bead. The stop bead is going to stop my bead from falling off the end of my thread, and it's going to stop all the rest of the other beads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stop bead onto my thread, and I'm going to let that have a good 10 inches at the end of my thread in order to attach my clasp after the fact. My needle goes up away from the stop bead towards the long piece of thread. And I forgot to mention I did cut, or I would cut about a wingspan, about 5 inches of thread. I do twice for that stop bead. After that, I'm going to do a pattern. This one here has 4 wide in the SuperDuos. You can do 2, you can do 4, it's kind of up to you. My pattern is going to start with 2 seed beads, a SuperDuo, 2 seed beads, SuperDuo, 2 seed beads, SuperDuo, and I'm just picking these up in a random order. So I have my pattern of 2 SuperDuos, or 2 seed beads, and then a SuperDuo. I have 4 sets of that, ending with a SuperDuo. So I've gone through the first hole of my SuperDuos. To come back and do my second row, I'm going to go through the top hole of the SuperDuo towards the stop bead. So I'm going back in the opposite direction. After I do that, I'm going to start adding my rotation of my herringbone. So for my herringbone, every time I add beads, I'm going to be adding 1 seed bead and 1 SuperDuo. I'm going to be sewing back through the seed beads below the last row. So I'm sewing back through those 2 beads that are here. 2 11 O's if I can get to them here. And my needle's going back through those 2 11 O's. At the same time, I'm also going to go through the top hole of the second to last SuperDuo of my first row. So each time, so my initial row had 2 beads that were starting out my row. Every time after this, I'm just going to have 1 bead. After you get 3 rows, this is much easier to see what's going on. Again, my pattern is 1 of my 11 O's and 1 of my SuperDuos. So back through my seed beads and also the SuperDuo, the second hole of the next SuperDuo in line. So this would be SuperDuo number 2, in my original row. I'm pulling the thread back. I'm pulling nice and tight. Next, again, another seed bead and SuperDuo go on, sewing back through my seed beads and through that second hole of the first SuperDuo that I put on originally. And that's going to pull me nice and tight. The first one looks really funny. That first row, it just doesn't look like it's sitting right. When you're looking at it, it just wants to bend and doesn't want to really sit correctly. It's not until we get the third row going that it's going to really sit. So each time in each row, I'm going to be putting on 4 super duos. Right now I have on 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to add my 4th. Again, 11-0, and then a super duo. And I'm sewing when I get to the end back through those first 2 seed beads that I added at the very start. Pulling nice and tight. You always want to make sure to keep the super duos with the empty hole at the top of the project. You want to keep them up at the top. After this, I'm just going to mask my sides a little bit by adding 2 15-0 seed beads, and this is just going to keep my thread from showing. And then I'm going to go up through the top hole of the last super duo that I added in row 2. After I come out of the super duo, again, on goes an 11-0 and a super duo. And then I'm going to sew through the seed bead in the row below it, as well as the super duo in the row below it. Pull nice and tight. Again, a seed bead goes on, super duo goes on. I'm going to sew through my 11-0 seed bead and also through the top hole of the super duo from the last row. You can see it starting to form a little bit more now. Again, seed bead goes on, super duo goes on, sew through the 11-0 and that first super duo from row 2. And after I get that one on, it starts to pull that opening section back nicely towards the bracelet. You can start to see your pattern now. Again, when you get to the end of the row, you need to have 4 super duos on. Right now we only have 3. 1, 2, 3. So I know I need to do one more rotation of my seed bead super duo. Sewing back through then just the 11-0 as you get to the end of the rows. Once I have my collection of 4 on with my 4 seed beads and super duo rotation, and I'm on the end, that's where again I grab 2 15-0s, and that's just hiding my thread on the side. I'm going back up through the top hole of the last super duo that I put on. Once you have row 3 now, it's much easier to see and to follow where you need to be because the beads are kind of sticking up in place. So like most herringbone, it's kind of odd to see at the start, and then as you get going, it gets easier and easier. Again, seed bead goes on, super duo goes on. I'm going to go through that seed bead that's sitting there, as well as the super duo. Pull tight, on goes seed bead, super duo, through the seed bead there, through the top hole of the super duo. Again, seed bead, super duo, through my seed bead, through the super duo. So just like regular herringbone, you're adding 2 beads and you're sewing through 2 beads. Until you get to the end, you're only sewing through that 1 seed bead. When I come out of that 1 seed bead, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 15-0s and come back up through the top hole of that last super duo that I added. I'm going to keep going, and my bracelet is going to get longer and longer, and as my pattern forms, I'm just doing a random pattern. You can do a pattern if you want, of rows of color. As I get longer and longer, my bracelet will get longer and longer, going with that same pattern. So I'm continuing along with my product, and again, when I get to the ends, I pick up 2 of my 15-0 seed beads, go up through the top hole of my super duo, and then I'm ready again to start my pattern with 1 11-0, 1 super duo, sewing through in a herringbone style through my 11-0, through my super duo. Again, 11-0, super duo, through 2. And you can see here I've gotten a fair amount further in my project, And I'm just going to continue building my project until I get to the ends. And what I've decided to do at the ends is actually use some of the new Czech buttons that we've gotten in the cup buttons. So I've come to the end of my bracelet where I'm ready to finish off. So I've added my last SuperDuo and seed bead. I'm going to take my two 15-0s here, put them on the side, come back to the top hole of the SuperDuo, and what I'm going to do is actually mimic the start of the bracelet. So when you're looking at the start, there are two 11-0 seed beads in between each SuperDuo. That's what I'm going to do on this side as well to fill in that gap of space. I'm going to put two 11-0 SuperDuo, or two 11-0 in between my SuperDuos, and go through the next hole of the SuperDuo. Again, on go two 11s, and through the top hole of my SuperDuo. Two more 11s, through the SuperDuo, and I'm going to end with two 11s as well. When I end with the two 11s, what I'm going to do is actually swing this back around a little bit. So I'm going to finish it off by going down through the second hole of the SuperDuo, of the last one in line. I'm going to pull tightly, and that's going to kind of finish up that little end there. Has a little triangle almost then of that silver beads. What I'm going to do on this side is I'm going to attach my buttons, and then on the other side I'm going to do my loops. So it's kind of a gamble whether or not you want to do two or one depending on how wide it is. This is just wide enough that I think I'm going to do two buttons. So what I need to do is I need to get to the outer side here. I need to decide how my buttons are going to go. If they're going to sit on top of your bracelet, you could do that and make your bracelet a little bit longer. What I'm going to do is actually put mine out a little bit. So I do want them coming out of right about here and here because I don't want them to sit right on top of one another. So I always snake back through my project just so you don't see any thread. So I'm going to find a place to drop down into the project and come back up through the project as well. And I'm going to circle around then, so that way I'm coming out right between these seed beads. So I'm coming out right here at the end of a seed bead, and what I'm going to do is use my 11-0 seed beads, and I'm just going to make a little bit of a line out to my buttons. So I have 8 seed beads that I'm going to put on. Once I have those 8 seed beads on, I'm going to come up through the back of my button towards the front, and that's how far away from the bracelet that seed bead is going to sit. If you want your clasp to be a little bit closer, you can use a little bit less seed beads. That's kind of up to you. I'm also going to decorate the top of it with, actually, I'm going to do a SuperDuo. Go through one hole of the SuperDuo, come down through the other side. And that's going to decorate that up really nicely so that it incorporates both colors in my project. After that, I'm going to come back down through that same line of seed beads that I put on. So back down through those 8 seed beads and out. And that's going to get my first button in place. I'm going to go now and snake along my project right here at the end to get over here to put my other button in place as well. And the other button is going to be the same exact as this first one. That I'm just going to take my thread and needle, go right down along the line till I come out towards my end. And right here after the SuperDuo, I'm going to add my 8 seed beads again. Once I have them on, through the back of my button, out the top, on goes a SuperDuo, and lay inside my button, down through the bottom here. So I've got those laying then right on. I'm going to reinforce both of these buttons that are hanging out by after I come down my button and go through the back of all those seed beads, I'm going to run my thread and needle back down the line so I can reinforce this one, and then I'll reinforce the second one as well. After I'm done reinforcing them and just repeating and going back down a second time, what I'm going to do is tie off my thread and get ready on my other side to do my loops. So now that I have my first end done, I'm going to work on my second end here. I'm going to take my stop bead off my project. I sewed back through it 2 times in the opposite direction to take that stop bead off. And you're going to see that these sides are kind of going to mimic one another when you're looking at them. And what we're going to do on this side is make 2 loops for my buttons to go into. So all I'm going to do is try to come out about the same place. So my thread and needle are coming out on this side. I'm going to need to circle that around, hiding it in a SuperDuo. If I would have done one more row, it probably would have been good because then it would have been coming out in the correct place. And once I'm coming out in an appropriate place, you can always fold your bracelet too to make sure where you're coming out is a good place to make your loop. I'm actually going to take it back a little bit further along my line. And I'm going to start my loop here next to this SuperDuo. To start your loop, you can do peyote pattern. You can just do a simple loop. I'll show you how to do a simple loop, which once you do one loop, it'll be the same exact for the other one. So you want your loop just big enough that your buttons will fit through and catch on. And again, I'm using my 11 O's to make my loop. And I'm going to need to dump out a couple more of my 11 O's to finish my loop here. Again, I need it big enough that my button will fit through. That looks about perfect. And to finish my loop, I'm going to take my needle and thread back through the first bead that I put on. So it's the first bead that I put on to make my loop. I'm going back through that same bead. And that's going to make my first loop. I'm going to take my needle and thread down along the bottom line of my project here. And I'm going to get ready to make my second loop. And then just like the buttons, I'm going to come back and reinforce it. Or if you want to do a peyote loop, you can do that as well. Once I'm in position for my second loop, I'm going to do the same thing, making another loop just out of my seed beads. And it's a good idea to count your seed beads to make sure if you are making 2 loops that they are the same size. If you want to decorate it up a little bit, you can use some different beads along the sides here, different colors. I could have picked up some 11O seed beads in the colors of my bracelet. But I want to concentrate on the buttons at the end, so I'm just using the silver ones that were in. So I have a little bit more to add here. And then again, I'm going to sew down through my first bead that I added, back up the line, reinforce, back down the line, reinforce, and then cut everything off so I have my bracelet ready to go. So I finished off my bracelet, and now that it's done, I can actually put it on with my buttons and right along. See how much skill I have that I can actually get this on. But you're just going to put it right around your buttons, and they're just going to fit nicely right over. I might need another set of hands to put this one on. Sometimes the double button, even though they look really cool, they're a little bit more difficult to get on. There's one. We'll get the other one on here, and then I'll model it for you. Rather than me struggling to get the other one on, I'll just flip it over so that way you can see it. But this is an awesome bracelet. It's an awesome almost cuff bracelet that turned out a little bit thicker. I have both buttons sitting here as a little decoration that you can wear in the front or in the back that you're wearing them. Again, they feature our new Czech Cup buttons, and this is the turquoise or the jade color that we're doing here. And hopefully you have a lot of fun doing this project. It's a nice version of herringbone that you don't have to, once you get going, think really hard. You can just sit there and do it. You can do it in a pattern. You don't have to do it in a pattern, but it's a great little fun bracelet. to make that you can look at. If you have a chance to check out some of our other YouTube videos, you can go also to our Facebook page, like us there, and check out all our updates. You can also check us out online at PotomacBeads.com to learn how to make some more projects. Check out some of our class listings. If you're by one of our locations, we'd love to see you stop by, gather some materials for some of our projects, or take an in-person class. You can also buy materials at thebeadco.com if you don't live near one of our locations. Thanks a lot for watching, and have a great rest of your day, and have fun making this SuperDuo Knit Herringbone Bracelet.